We're going to begin sculpting our first head by blocking in key proportions. And this step is important because if the foundation is incorrect, then everything we do afterwards is going to be incorrect as well. And this formulaic approach is designed to take you step by step so that you can get as close as possible to correct proportions as systematically as possible. And so we're going to begin in a default Blender scene with the default cube. First, I will select our camera and lamp and delete them. Select our cube, and we'll go ahead and rename this Head Sculpt. And right away, I want to hit Control and 5 on the number row above your letter keys. And this will add in our modifier panel a subdivision surface modifier with 5 levels of subdivision. In other words, we take a blocky cube and make it a very smooth spherical shape. And now I want to apply the subdivision surface, tab into edit mode, and then I will hit my spacebar key, which brings up the search function, which I should say that I changed that by default. If we go to our preferences under key map, I like to make my spacebar the search function. And when I hit spacebar, I'm going to type sphere, and we find this 2-sphere transform operator. And when I press that, we can scroll left and right with our mouse, and you'll see that the shape ever so slightly transforms into a perfect sphere. I can also hit the 1 key on the number pad, and now we've got a perfect sphere. The only other thing I want to do is from the front view, in order for the formula to work, I want it to correspond to the grid, specifically 1 Blender unit in each direction. So this is 1 Blender unit, and I want to incorporate the other axes as well. And the way you can tell this is this particular grid level has a slight boldness to its line. So you should be able to see it showing up here. I'm going to tab into edit mode and scale up just to about there. Now our sphere fits within the Blender units. The size, if we look at our item in the in panel, your dimensions should be really close to 2 meters in each axis. Now with that set up, we are ready to begin sculpting. With our object selected, I'll switch to sculpt mode. And I like to use a matte cap. And then I'm going to drag my brush panel out a little bit so that we have the 2 rows. And first we're going to click our annotate tool. We're going to be using this to outline mile markers along the way. But I want this to be in reference to the surface of our object. And now if I click, hold Control and pull down, we'll make a straight line down the center. That's a little bit off, but we just are ballparking it at this point. Same thing on the side, we'll go horizontally. So we have put a crosshair in the middle of our sphere. Let's go ahead and change the color to be a little more noticeable, like a bright yellow. And then from here, I'm going to switch to my pen and tablet. And I'm going to split the right half into thirds. So 1 line, 2 lines makes an equal third. Again, I'm doing this with my eye. I'm not doing it perfectly, but it's going to get us very close. And on that second line that we made, I'm going to draw a vertical line right down the middle of that, or as close as possible. There we go. From here, I'm going to use my B box select. Keep in mind, we have the X mirror enabled by default. So B box select up until that line, and it's going to duplicate the mask to the other side. Control I to invert, and I want to scale this side flat. So we'll use our transform tool, and I want to adjust where the pivot is set. So if we go to our sculpt menu, set pivot to unmasked should be fine, and we'll scale that horizontally, almost completely flat. I like to leave a little bit of roundness there, and then we'll pull that flat along the line that we drew. Alt-M to clear the mask. Let's go to the left side by hitting 3 on the number pad. And let's draw more lines doing the same thing. Whoops. Vertically, horizontally. And from the side view, we're going to keep referencing the grid. So let me create a new annotation layer. In the in panel under annotations, hit the plus mark. And the grid that I'm talking about is this square here. And then draw another one below it. Keep accidentally erasing. I'm going to subdivide this in half, and then the upper part in half again. I'm going to bring this quadrant of our sphere down to represent the chin, or the chin and jaw shelf. And before I bring that down, let's move to the grab brush with the G hotkey. And I want to make this brush pretty big, a little bit bigger than the quadrant. Once I have that properly sized, I'm going to put the cursor as close to the edge of our sphere and bring it down. Essentially, I'm going to make this a corner. So it looks like my brush was not quite big enough. Let's make it even bigger. Try it again. Just trying to bring this down into a rounded but more squared off corner. All right, that's going to represent the chin, at least the initial shape of the chin. From the front, it might be a little too pointed, so let's round that out slightly. Just give it a little bit more volume. And now from the side view, we're ready to bring this down into the jaw. So with the B box select, I'm going to select this quadrant and then hit A to bring up our mask pie menu and choose smooth mask. And I'll hit Shift R to repeat that one more time. Control I to invert, back to our transform, and we will bring that down so that the chin and jaw rest right about that quarter marking of the bottom square. And from here, we're ready to pull out a neck shape. So I'm going to hit Alt-M again to clear the mask. Let's grab our straight line annotate tool. And first, I'm going to draw a line on this backside bottom quadrant from corner to corner, just like this. And then go back to our annotate and split this line into thirds. 1, 2. Okay? So now where this line intersects with our jaw, and then this diagonal intersects with the back of the head, we're going to paint a mask in between those two spots. So switch to the mask brush. Keep in mind that the line annotate tool does not stick to the surface of our sculpture. So you can either erase that and draw it by hand. You know, we're okay just getting close. We don't have to be laser precise. And now I've got markings that I can clearly paint out. Let's hide that other annotate layer. And now I can clearly paint an oval shape on the bottom with the mask brush. All right, we're going to get really close to the side of the head. And it's okay to make the back side a little bit flatter and the front side a little more elongated. There we go. That's going to be fine. Control I to invert. Hit 3 on the number pad to go back to the side view. And we can use our transform tool once again to bring this down. Now, my point of reference for how far to bring this down is the bottom corner of this chunk to line up to the bottom corner of the grid quadrant. So right about here. And then with my grab brush, we can flatten the bottom by bringing that front side up and then smoothing, holding shift and smoothing the bottom. And at this point, it's a good idea to go ahead and remesh. So with our remesh settings, voxel size, I'm going to go to 0.03 and hit Control R. And that will remove our mask and provide us with more uniform geometry. And I'm just smoothing that out with holding Shift. And then from the front view, maybe bring out the bottom of this neck structure so it's a little more even. How does it look from the side? Maybe bring that forward to closer match our reference line. There we go. And now holding Shift, Control, left click, and drag, we're going to create a marquee selection where this blue line intersects our silhouette. So Shift, Control, left click, and drag. It's going to be kind of a rounded shape until I select about halfway up in this grid quadrant. Okay, so we're talking about this intersection and then about halfway through here. All right, Control I to invert, hit the A pie menu, smooth the mask, Shift R to do that a couple times. And now with our transform, we can look at the front, and I'm first going to scale out so the ends hit this quadrant here on each side. And then I'm going to bring it down so that the corner ends up right there at the corner of those grid units. All right, so with our transform selected, let's make sure that our set pivot is at the origin. So it's directly in the center of our object. We will scale horizontally in X, then move it down. And then from the side, we should also have to scale it a little bit in Y to about there. Alt-M to clear the mask. Let's turn off our annotations. Switch to a different brush so you can get an idea of what the proportions look like so far. And this is stage 1 of the block out. In the next lesson, we'll look at stage 2.